You know, the way I always thought of how to change my sport is just by being the best that I can be. When I first started boxing, I was 8 years old. I was the only girl walking into just about every gym in LA. So I fought boys growing up, sparred with boys and fought boys. So I just had to show that I was skilled enough and good enough to hang with them and to kick their ass, honestly. Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming out. I'm super excited to have this conversation with three badass women, changing the game in their sport. I think we all know to be a woman in sport right now, we are having hopefully not just a moment, but it is a time, and it is something that is going to continue. In case you don't know what's going around in women's sports, I'm gonna put you on notice, okay? It's volleyball selling out. I have a volleyball player here, selling out a football stadium at the beginning of the year. Give it up. College and WNBA shattering viewership records so crazily right now. The largest swim meet ever, selling out Lucas Oil Stadium. Never done that before. As well as the most attended soccer match at a baseball field at Wrigley Field. So soccer doing the thing, there's always women that are in the forefront fighting for equal pay, viewership, all those different things. And so you're seeing so many women changing the game. And so that's why I'm super happy to have this conversation with these three women. So Chiaka, I'm gonna start with you. We've seen a lot of change in recent years in terms of viewership. Which is what I just talked about. So as a volleyball player, how have you seen this in your sport, and how has it affected your success as an athlete?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it with the 92,000 people who showed up to watch the Nebraska volleyball game. They sold out their stadium. It was the largest crowd they've ever had in that football stadium. But I think for us, it's coming at the pivotal moment. We're introducing a professional league in the States for the first time. So I think the timing of it is perfect.
Yes.
Clap it up for that. But I'm excited to see where this sport goes. Like, we've seen that the numbers are there, the engagement in there, and people actually do want to see volleyball. So I'm excited for that to translate to the professional level.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so much, you hear the term, like, if you can see her, you can be her. I love to say that. And so I think just seeing that, seeing how it's changing the way people view investing in women's sports is something really big for us. Toni, what are some of the things that our audience might not know or realize that you go through as a woman's athlete? Because I have to admit, I don't know a ton about race car driving. I do know that it's popular. We've got F1, we've got NASCAR and all those things out there, but tell us some of the things that we might not know that you deal with as an athlete in a sport that many people think is male dominated. And let them know that you are a Victoria's Secret model at the same time.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, so motorsports, particularly NASCAR, is very male dominated. So being one of the few females in the sport, you definitely deal with some adversity. And for me, like, the biggest thing is surrounding myself with people who treat me as an equal, like my team seeing me as a race car driver and not as a female, I think is really important for me. And yeah, I mean, it's just difficult because I feel like there's so many like stereotypes, and I think people deal with it in all sorts of male dominated spaces, not even just motorsports. So for me, if I can even just like inspire people who maybe aren't even necessarily in motorsports, but people who are in male dominated spaces, that just do your thing, even if you're not doing like the stereotypical thing, just kind of keep pursuing it. And there's going to be people around you that are kind of like intimidated that you're doing something different, but you have to kind of just have that like inner confidence in yourself and just know that you're capable of it, more than capable of it.
Yeah, do you feel like with the other part of that, you being a model and people seeing, there's so many people that just see surface, and so they don't expect some things. And so can you talk a little bit about like the equality that you're talking about? Do you ever feel like your counterparts don't take you seriously because of the other things, you want to accentuate your multidimensionality? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with me especially, branching out and like modeling and pursuing other things that I'm interested in that, again, like the other male drivers aren't doing, people get really pressed about it, and they're like, you need to be focusing on racing. Are you trying to be a model or a race car driver? I'm like, I'm trying to just do it all. I'm trying to be myself. I'm trying to pursue what I want to pursue. And I feel like me pursuing modeling or any other interests that I have doesn't take away from me being a race car driver. I'm still a race car driver. And I'm still more than capable of going out there and winning races regardless of, the other passions that I want to pursue.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can easily relate to that because a lot of the times when people see me and they know that I'm a college basketball coach, they see my outfits and they're like, oh, okay, well, she dresses nice. And then the question follows, well, does she win? It has nothing to do with the fact that I like to look fabulous, but you can also check the resume because I have won quite a bit in my life.
Absolutely.
So drops the mic.
Right.
I want to go into a question with Seneisa here because I think a lot of people do think your field is also male dominated, even though we see so many women boxers out there. But the lady is 26-0, okay? So she's doing something correct. I want to ask you, how do you balance focusing on your athletic performance versus playing your role in advancing women's sports and creating change?
The way I always thought of how to change my sport is just by being the best that I can be. I wanted people to always see me in the ring and say, she's a great fighter, not a great female fighter. She doesn't fight like a girl, she can compete with the boys. Because when I first started boxing, I was 8 years old. I was the only girl walking into just about every gym in LA. So I fought boys growing up, sparred with boys and fought boys. So I just had to show that I was skilled enough and good enough to hang with them and to kick their ass, honestly. Yeah. So once I was able to show that, then that's kind of just how I was able to earn respect without even trying, really. I was just trying to just be the best that I can be. And with that comes, it helps open opportunities for other girls and other women. So now when you walk into a gym, it's mostly girls and women in a boxing gym than there is men and boys.
Yeah, I mean, I think hearing them talk, hopefully you guys can understand that back then it used to be an insult, like you play like a girl. Seeing women like you up here, that's a compliment now. Like people want to play like a girl. And so I just want to commend you guys for the work thus far that you've already done, because play like a girl is something everybody wants to do now. And so just hearing you speak about your confidence, I think everybody here can attest that you guys are exuding that as you answer these questions for them. I want to get into, we're in the age of NIL and college athletes. Don't ask me how I'm handling it. I'm sweating through my shirt, okay? But I want to talk about kind of what Toni has already touched on, having something else outside of this. So building your personal brand in a time where everyone's trying to figure out, what do I like to do outside of my sport? I want to go to you, Chiaka, first. Tell us about your brand deals and how they've supported you and your career as an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think for us female athletes, we understand that this sport's not going to last forever. So for us, it's all about diversifying our other interests, like you talked about. For me specifically, especially in the last year, obviously approaching the Olympics, there's just so much marketability going on right now. I've been really lucky. There's been a couple of brands that have supported my journey. A lot of different beauty companies and sports products that are just really invested right now in women's sports. Just did a makeup ad the other day, which was so outside of my comfort zone. But I think it's cool now that like a lot of brands are wanting to partner with female athletes. Obviously, the market is there, and a lot of female athletes are already invested in those endeavors. But for me specifically, like I just want to make sure that I represent our sport the best way I can. I can't keep talking about wanting our sport to be at the forefront if I'm not also engaging in it. So I've just been really excited that other brands have seen that interest and have been interested in partnering with me as well.
Do you think that it was hard to cross over into the beauty realm? Because a lot of times we're just now starting to see a lot of beauty brands kind of like invest into women and say, okay, I want to showcase that these athletes can cross over and do makeup ads. Have you seen any troubles, like kind of just figuring out how you're going to navigate, that pathway to figure out how you can make it your own?
Not necessarily. I think as I'm trying to figure it out, I'm understanding that brands are too. The ad I just did was with Milani Cosmetics, and they told us it was their first time partnering with athletes ever. So the fact that it's obviously the year of the Olympics, a lot of things are going on, and they partnered with a diverse range of athletes, myself, a basketball player, a gymnast, and a weightlifter. I think just shows that like as long as you present yourself as like interested in the opportunities, brands are gonna follow, and we're all gonna figure it out at the same time. But to answer your question, I don't think necessarily it's been a struggle. It's just been like, how do we partner and also get the most out of this partnership for both parties?
So you just told us you the blueprint. Is what.
I don't know about all that, but working on it.
I think this one is a good one for you too, Seneisa and Toni. What do you want your legacy to be when it comes to having your career as an athlete and also aligning yourself with brands? What do you want your story to be behind that you leave?
I just want to leave a story behind that inspires young girls and inspires women. And that's the main thing, the world titles and the undefeated record at the end of the day doesn't mean much to me. It's who I inspire and who can relate to me and just be inspired by my story. That's kind of what I'm going for and what I want my legacy to be.
Yeah, I would say, years from now, when I eventually retire, I want to be able to look at motorsports and see that there's, younger girls, starting off in go-karts and moving up through the ladder system of NASCAR and just seeing more involvement with females in the sport. And I feel like if I see that, then I'll be like, okay, I did my job right. I think just, opening the doors for other females and people of color to, feel comfortable in the sport and be able to also move up through the ranks, because I feel like there's a lot of people at the entry level, but as you kind of try to move up through the ranks in motorsports, that number kind of dwindles down and you see less and less diversity in the sport. So I feel like just kind of like opening those doors and hopefully being a trailblazer. So
I want to kind of get into the state of women's sports. So we talked about, how people are moving the needle, where viewership has gone, how much people are actually investing in women's sports in all things. But I'm interested to hear from all of you about what frustrates you most about the state of women's sports today. There's the glitz and glam, but there's still more work to be done. So I'm kind of interested in what you still have some frustrations about when it comes to continuing to move the needle.
Should I go ahead? Okay. Yeah, I would say, a big one that comes to my mind first is the pay inequality. I think, so many brands are, thankfully interested in supporting and investing in female athletes. But I think if you look at really the dollar amounts of what the male versus the female athlete is getting, there's still that huge gap. So it's amazing that people want to invest and want to support, but we're not getting that same financial support.
Yeah. And to go off of what she said, and speaking of brands are extremely important for us because in our career, in our field, we don't get paid equal to what the men make. So having these brand deals and having these brands behind us to support us just helps us stay afloat and helps us to be able to just keep doing our thing and be the best in our sport.
Yeah. I would just like to talk about the visibility too, the visibility aspect. I mean, I feel like for so long there was an argument that there's not a market for this. We can't showcase this on primetime TV because there's no market for it. But I think my answer has always been, so create it. I think you can't exclude a certain group of people or a certain group of athletes unless you're actually doing the work to showcase them. I think this year for Final Four, NCAA women's volleyball was the first time it was on ESPN primetime TV and it broke records. So I think the argument and the answer to that is if you don't believe there's a market, then create it and test it. And we're seeing that obviously as time is going on, but I know that's an encouragement from a lot of female athletes and a lot of brands to just keep pushing that needle and really create that change within the sport by actually marketing those people.
That actually segues me into my next question. So I kind of got Chiaka's answer already. It's create it. But I think a question for you two is, what do you feel like you can actively do to solve some of those challenges that you talked about with equal pay? And I mean, I know you guys don't have all the answers, but I'm curious to know if you think there's something that you or anyone out in the crowd can do to kind of remedy that.
Yeah, I actually can relate to that so much because I went through a contract dispute with my previous boxing promoter, and I had to make the decision to stick to my guns, and I stood out of the ring and didn't fight for 11 months because I was going through this contract dispute, and I said, I'm not going to fight until I get paid what I want to be paid. And I ended up signing with a new promoter, Top Rank on ESPN, and got exactly how much I wanted. So that was just, thank you. Thank you. That was such a huge step for, I felt very proud of myself for doing that because it's so tough because of course, to make money in this sport, fighters just jump to take a fight and because they want to be paid. But, I was like, enough is enough. If I don't do this, then I'll never open up the doors for other female fighters and other girls in sports.
Toni?
Yeah, I think, having conversations just like this is important, educating people and just having visibility and also using our platforms. I think social media is a great place because, seeing is believing. So I feel like the more people that can see, what we're doing, they're like, hey, I can do that too. So I think really just like having conversations like this and just really using our platform. And I think it just kind of a building like growth effect.
Yeah, so you talk about the media. We know the media can be kind. It can also be harsh. I'm interested to know, what are the impacts of having female representation in sports? How is that seen? And then how do you feel like it affects you? Because I have a woman manager who I think is doing a phenomenal job, and I don't think anyone else could have done the job. But as a female, how do you think female representation is in sports? And do you see that getting better with so many people technically not being girls?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, seeing female representation in other sports is inspiring. I love, following other female athletes, even if they're not in my sport. And yeah, I think it's just inspiring for other people, and kind of like what I went off with before is, seeing is believing. So I feel like the more exposure that these female athletes get, then, younger girls will look up to them and say, hey, I can do that too. And yeah.
I think it's also just showing us there's so many different ways to be involved in sport besides being a female athlete. I think growing up, I thought that was my only ticket into sports. But like you said, your manager's a female. I work with female managers as well. And I think that's also important, that representation for little girls and young girls there, saying if you do have an interest in sport, your only avenue is not just being a female athlete. There's management, there's media, there's marketing, producing, and the list goes on and on. So I'm excited to see where this goes in terms of that representation.
Yeah, and I help my friend Agnesa and Elvina, who are here. Hi, guys. One's a bare knuckle fighter and one's a professional boxer. So I'm now helping them with trying to help them guide their careers. And, I've been through everything that they're going through now with struggling to get to where I am today. So I know what the whole process is like. So now I know what a crappy manager is. I know what, I know all those little things and all those, the bad side of the business. So I try my best to make sure that they have the right guidance with things like that. So having a female, represent them and who's going to fight hard for them and make sure that they didn't go through the same things that I've gone through.
Did you say bare knuckle?
Bare knuckle right there, bare knuckle champion.
That's a different level of tough
different.
right there.
That's different. I'm tough, but that's crazy tough.
Seneisa, another question for you. So there's often conversation about double standards and misogyny in sports media. Have you experienced this?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's why even talking to the media, boxing media especially, could be like the worst type of media. But so I've dealt with that a lot, and it's difficult. But at the same time, I try my best to just be myself, and no matter what, through any of those situations.
And Toni, how do you think you can combat that, since you've probably experienced that as well? And Chiaka, if you've experienced that, I'd love to hear your take on it as well.
Yeah, I think it's easier said than done, but I think just kind of almost ignoring it. And like for me, like you'll obviously see like on social media will be like negative comments, and like in interviews you'll be asked questions that the males don't get asked. And like in the moment it's hard, but I think really just having like a core group of people that are really supportive of you and can kind of help lift you up when you're kind of feeling down in those moments. But again, it's easier said than done. But I think for me, with like the team that I have around me, they all truly believe in me. So I'm like, as long as my crew chief is happy, my team is happy, my partners are happy, then I'm doing my job. And those people who have negative comments, they're really irrelevant at the end of the day. But yeah, it's easier said than done. But I think just having that kind of like core group of people to really help you out, and just really having that inner like belief in yourself.
No, I like that. And I also think like we're in such a cool time where we get to kind of own our own narrative. So it almost, to your point, doesn't matter what the media says because we take that control. So I guess my advice for myself, and I know a lot of my teammates live by this, is at the end of the day, like your word is what matters. So as long as you can put out there what you want to put out there and you know that your intentions are pure, it doesn't necessarily matter what anyone else has to say.
So naturally, we've talked about, how much representation matters. It's something that I say all of the time. I've actually got it printed on a jacket. Representation matters. So I stand firm in that. But naturally, we're talking about you guys being sheroes in sports. And so I'm interested, who are your sheroes in sport?
I would say I have so many female athletes that I look up to, but I love like Coco Gauff and Angel Reese right now. They're my top two favorites. So yeah, they're ones that I'm like, they're doing their thing and they're unapologetic about it. And it's really inspiring for me.
Mine has to be a former teammate, and she hates anytime I shout her out because I'm obsessed with her and talk about her any chance I get. But for me, it is Feluca Conrado. She's a 3-time medalist and Olympian with women's indoor volleyball. And in a sport that doesn't have a lot of Black and brown girls playing, for me, she was like the first representation of someone playing at the highest level. So for me, it was crazy that I got a full circle moment with her in Tokyo, getting to play with her because I grew up idolizing her. And to this day, I think she's just been a pioneer in our sport. She had a baby and came back and played in Tokyo. So literally at every level, she has shown us like what it can take and what it looks like when you do it like gracefully and stick true to yourself. So once again, I'm shouting her out and she's gonna see this and roll her eyes at me, but love her always.
Oh, I just love how in every sport now, there's just so many women to look up to. And growing up, there was not many female fighters, or actually none at all. So I didn't have that female fighter to look up to. I looked up to like the male fighters like Roy Jones Jr., Sugar Ray Leonard, those type of guys. But it's not the same as having a female to look up to and saying like, she looks just like me, or if she can do it, I can do it. So, but right now it's definitely Caitlin Clark. I think everything she's doing is super dope. And the way speaking of media, the way she handles all the criticism and everything in the media has been great. So she's definitely an inspiration, but just not only her, but just so many other women. And of course, these ladies up here too, so inspiring.
I'm just happy to know each person that you guys named. It just shows the advancement of women's sports and how we are being put out there and put on display for our talents and our gifts to show. I want to leave you guys with one more question to kind of challenge the audience, if you will. And I want each of you to answer. What would you tell everyone listening? Fellas, open those ears. Okay. What should I do to support women's sports right now?
Watch it. Just watch it. And that's one thing that I have always told myself, and one thing that my father's always told me and my trainer have always told me through the years of struggle, not being able to sign with a big promoter, not being televised, and not making money. They always told me, just keep winning because your skills cannot go unnoticed. And I think that's what's happening right now with so many women in different sports, is that you can't deny our skill level, you can't deny our talent. And when you are forced, well, not forced, but when you just see the skill level and talent of women now, it just automatically just makes you want to support and watch. So I think that's the skill level is just one thing that's so different from the way it was before in sports for women.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if you're here right now, you're a fan of women's sports. 1, thank you. And 2, I think it's now your duty to make sure everyone in your community also is a fan. So that means you're bringing your uncle to the Sparks game, a women's volleyball game. You're getting your niece a basketball or volleyball for Christmas. And I think it's just continuing to inspire those in your community to support women's sports and to show them how important it is, not just for young women, but also young boys too, and anyone else who is like a champion and who's a fan of sports. So I would just say support it and then invite your friends and family also to support it.
Yeah, definitely, watching it and like you said, going to the games and like actually going to go support, buying merchandise, because little things like that, like, and like just word of mouth, like other people hear that you're doing it. And it's like, oh, okay, like this person's wearing this jersey. Who is that? Because I do that myself. I'm like, well, who's that jersey? So yeah, I think just like supporting with like merchandise, following on social media, there's so many different ways that you can kind of support, and the numbers make such a big difference and just will help.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much. I want to thank the audience, and I certainly want to thank you guys for continuing to be so amazing. Seneisa, you're going to go 27-0, 28, keep counting. Chiaka's going to be in the Olympics, so turn on those TVs and watch her play. And Toni, keep doing your thing, setting the example for what it's like to be a woman in a male-dominated sport. And for the audience, continue to invest in sports. I know a lot of your favorite rookies are playing in the WNBA right now, but there's still some amazing college athletes out there. So don't just go all over there. Come back over here too and keep flip-flopping from summer to fall. But just keep pouring into women, because as you can see, this is the result when you continue to invest in women and women in sports. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we are out.
You know how this goes.